Okay. So yeah, that's so the key component here is, you know, how do we bring that all together? And I think this is a pretty simple diagram, but sort of says it all. You know, our concept is to have all of your stakeholders working in a single centralized database, but it's connected to the models. And the best way to describe that, yeah, of course, in a 3D model, in a Revit model, geometry is best managed in the graphical model. But data isn't necessarily so, and data can be managed externally from the model, as long as there's a bi-directional link. And you know, we like to think we transform data into information, and we sort of almost democratize the data on the project. So it's not just those that have the 3D model or the Revit model that know what's going on, and you're not disconnected with Excel spreadsheets. You're all very much connected. And one of the key things that certainly owners find about the software is this ability to compare and validate. So you can always have your client needs, we'll talk about that later in terms of the brief versus what's been designed, and that validation is a critical sort of thing within dRofus. So yeah, this gives a very simplistic view of inputs and outputs. So, you know, you've got human beings, you've got Revit models, you've got IFC, you've obviously got Excel. You can import documents, information from Excel, and not just sort of Revit architectural models, but Revit MEP models, all having this link. So instead of having all this data in all these other places around the edge, it's basically in dRofus. And what does that mean? Well, you can then develop, you know, coordinated room data sheets. So you're not scrambling, you know, you're not having to bring different sets of data together at the end when somebody wants a room data sheet. It's all coming from that single source of truth. So, you know, we talk about, I don't want to use the word common data environment, because that's very much a specific term that is part of the ISO 19650. And I don't think anybody should be claiming that their software is a common data environment, but certainly dRofus is a single source of truth, is a database, is a functional unit of something that would come together as a tech stack for Ronald Liu to create that common data environment that you're looking for. So this is just a real schematic of what if you imagine a room on a project, you know, that room will have project requirements, functional, data building level, and there's all sorts of data requirements. And then you've got the room properties, room name, room number, programmed area, etc. Then you've got room data, you know, design requirements, functional needs, MEP, occupancy. One of the key things we're going to show you about dRofus is this concept of templates. You know, you can have 1,000 rooms in a building and you think, well, they're all different. They're all totally different. One does this, one does that. But actually, if you look at the occupancy or MEP requirements or the functional needs, the acoustic needs, the fire rating needs of that building, very often they can become what we call templates, and then either copies or derivations of that template. I mean, that is a key facet of the dRofus software. Then also not just room templates, but very often you have equipment lists that very much are derived for different rooms. You know, you may have GPOs, you may have audio visual, you may have air conditioning, you may have paint, finishes, carpets, all of which you want to set as lists, as item lists, as templates that can be used in multiple different rooms. And then ultimately outside of the room, dRofus very much works in terms of connecting disciplines and setting classifications and being able to manage products when it comes to things like HVAC, air conditioning, and things that don't sit in the room but sit across rooms. So that's sort of the raison d'etre, if you think, you know, it's a real simplistic way of thinking about what dRofus can do for you. Obviously, in a Revit model, there'll be geometry for that room, and you'll have, you know, the square meterage and whatever. But really, everything else, this metadata, really should be hosted and is best hosted in dRofus and shouldn't clog up the model. So again, I sort of reinforce what I've just said. You know, this is the functionality of dRofus. You know, dRofus database manage room properties, data, and its relationship to items such as equipment in these rooms. Having templates for room data and item lists for rooms, which can be then copied, derived, or set as unique for managing multiple complex rooms and data requirements is the way to go. Many rooms seem different in geometry, but actually share a lot of design and engineering construction requirements. So that's how deliverables such as room data sheets can be generated. And we'll also obviously show then how that connects to the Revit plugin. So I'm now, as I said before, going to show you about sort of 8 different shots from the software. So this would be the home screen of the software. You've got some key KPIs and bits and pieces, users in the home screen. You have a picture of the project, but this is the key, the modules down the left-hand side. And I'm not going to go through all of the modules today, but we're going to talk about templates, rooms and items, and then the reporting module. Everybody, I mean, I've talked a lot there. Everybody's still with us and happy? Yeah.
Maybe we will ask some questions after your presentation or what?
Yes, fantastic. Yeah. That's the way to go. So this principle of room templates, this is what we're showing you here is as a hotel, and we're going to focus in on this room, Hotel Premium 1. What you would have for that room is what we call the core properties, things like the name, the room number, those sorts of things. But if you click into that room, you can see this is the key, what we call the room data schema. And I think we're asked about how you would separate users and how you could have democratized information. You can imagine here having different windows, different tabs set for different users, electrical, architectural, etc. And that can all be set up so different people are entering. And then you would have images and documents, but also what we call these item lists, FF&E lists. So for these rooms, you'd have fixtures and fittings, you'd have finishes, you'd have other things such as GPOs, how many sockets there are, etc., etc. So that is, the principle of this room template. You can also view the software with those windows open, and some people like to have one window open, other people like to have lots of windows open. But I think this is important to see here, just to focus in. You would have different people. You'd have maybe people doing sign-off, people doing design. You'd have the windows and doors people here, hydraulics. You'd have electrical engineers, people doing ICT. They're all of their information is in different tabs. It's also really important to say all of these areas, all of these fields are customizable. This is just for illustration, but you as Ronald Liu may have specific standards or specific fields of information you want to capture in your room data sheet. And I'll show you later how obviously you're inputting data into this room data schema. And what we'll show you later is how that data is then published into a room data sheet.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? You say the button can be customized, right? And do we need to through you to customize that list, or we can actually customize them ourselves?
It's a great question. There's 2 aspects to that. What we would normally do when we do an implementation, you would provide us with your SOA, but then you provide us with your item list. And if you've got a specific field you want capturing, we would set up in the original setup. So we would hopefully get it going in the first week of implementation. Everything would be set up for your database.
So we need to through you to customize that list before we can use that data input thing.
That is one option. But if you look here in the software, there's this thing called settings, and that would allow you as a user to go in and adjust what we call it's the DIN-GUI, the dynamic graphical user interface. So there's a workflow where you could go in if you decide 6 months into the project there's a new field where you want to change the format. You can do that yourself. One of the real advantages of dRofus, it's not a software when you have a programmer have to set the fields and it's stuck. It has this dynamic user interface, which means you are able to go in and adjust the fields.
And also, if I have a furniture or a system that is outside my main model, which is imported as a link model, can we also capture the data, or we can alter the data using this software in our main model, so we can actually interact with all those link model?
Yeah, I will show you a couple of clips about how the software connects to Revit a little later, and hopefully you'll see that. Jasper, do you want to make any further comment at the moment, or should we just, it will be shown later, I think.
I will just make a quick comment on that. It is possible to look at linking of Revit files and take information, but I think we need to understand how you are actually pulling all the various Revit models together, and then be able to provide better advice on that. Because sometimes what it might happen is just because the way how dRofus works with links, that you might need to change, augment your workflow to get it working optimally with dRofus.
Okay, thank you.
So this next clip is going to talk about the items module. So this is everything that would be in a room. And you can see on the left-hand side, there is a hierarchical structure here. This is, again, you can have any standard that you would want, uniclass, omniclass, whatever it is. We'd be able to set the structure of the data up as you like. And again, as with the other module, you can see here we're focusing in on a chair. And what we want to show you here is very often early on, you'll just have a very outline idea of what that chair should be, but the data can be built up as the project progresses through design and construction and at various stages. And this just shows you the sort of data that can be built up for that project. You can have a connection to the specification. You know, if you've got Kobe deliverables on that product, you can have it there. You've got images that can be connected, and also if there's a specification for that particular chair, they can be attached. So again, it's just to show you that you've got room template, then you've got items module, and this is how it connects. And again, you can view that module through. You can have the panes open to view them. So going back to rooms, I showed you the room templates, but this is now the actual building, and we're looking at a building that has 14 floors, and we're going to focus in on level 7. And you can see here we've got a number of different rooms. Again, we talked about this premium bedroom. You can see the core properties there of room name, room number. You've got the programmed, briefed area and designed area, other dimensions, areas and measurements, etc. What you can also see here, though, is some of these rooms in this room status area, you've got either they're from, which means they're just a direct copy of that template HRS01, or they're derived. And this room premium bed 1 has been derived from HRPRE, you can see. And whenever there's a change from the template, there is a little red annotation to show the difference. So in this case, you can see a couple of comments, and over in the measurements area, the actual template was 3 meters in width. This room is different, maybe at the end of a corridor is 4 meters. And so and that applies again with the FF&E list here. You can see this one has been derived again from the template, but there's actually an extra room in this, extra chair in this room, maybe because it's a little bit wider, so that this room has that extra chair. So again, just to show you how we develop the rooms and how you can use that principle of templates. What I'm going to show you now, and this may not come across that clearly on the screen, so forgive me, but this is really just how the software connects to Revit. So if you have a Revit on if you download the software, if you've already got Revit loaded, then automatically there's a dRofus add-in that will pop up. And we'll just focus in on this particular room with nothing placed in it. Normally you would have to manually place information into this room, but we'll show you now how you can connect. It automatically connects and links to dRofus. And it does that through what we call this is the key really, this thing called the attribute configuration. This is where the connection is made between dRofus attributes, room name, number, and things, Revit families, or things that might be in Revit. And in this case, you can see we're pulling the room name and the room number from dRofus, and we can show that by, if we change the name in dRofus and press sync, that automatically gets uploaded and updated, and we press sync in Revit. You can also see if we update a comment in Revit and do the same, we synchronize back, and that comment gets fed back into dRofus. And this is all about just setting up those connections. What needs to come from dRofus and what needs, normally the geometry and other things would come from Revit. And you can see here, we're looking at this level 7, this premium bed again. You can see it's been, the comment has been updated from Revit back to dRofus. There is a separate workflow. Some people like to do this synchronizing. We do also now have this thing called what we call the dRofus panel in Revit. So you don't have to do the synchronize. You just update the number, for instance, in the panel in dRofus, in the dRofus panel in Revit, if that makes sense, and that automatically gets updated. Some people like to have the workflow where there's a check. So before you make the change, there's a sync, and other people just have the automatic Revit panel. Here you can see another major feature of the software. You've got the programmed area and the designed area from the model. So you can do this validation very quickly. And here we can see one of the sort of inbuilt reports that is there, which is an area heat map, which shows what the programmed area was versus what the designed area is. And you can see here, you can see anything below 5% is in green, anything 5 to 10% is amber, everything over 10% is a cause for concern. And that is, I mean, I'm sure you guys as designers, there are other ways of doing that. And I've seen other people doing that with the Revit model versus 2D drawings. Doing that validation is really quite an arduous task if you don't have this, and it's quite an easy workflow and a very, very useful workflow within dRofus. So that's how rooms connect. What we're going to show you now is just how in that same room, how we can look at FF&E. And what we like to think about, if you think about dRofus, you're recording what's required in terms of furniture, finishes, and services. So the dRofus Revit plugin compares the model and database, highlighting differences. And you can see here, we had a room which should have had 2 chairs placed, but there was none. So we can go away and do the search for the chair, and we can find the chair. dRofus goes away, does the search, finds the chair in dRofus, and we can then connect and link that chair. You can also see that the plan is to have 2 chairs in that room, so we can either place or manually place, automatically or manually place that second chair in that room. And as they say, all is well with the world. You will know also there is actually a cupboard here where it's in the model, but it's not in dRofus. But you can do exactly the same thing. You can press update dRofus. And if that's a departure from the plan, well, there'll be a log report and you'll be able to see the log of what's happened. This is also just a quick report that can be done on a level stage, where again, you want to see what's been designed and what's been planned. And if we just run this report and we can just export all of these items on this particular level 7, and we discount the ones that are the same, again, you have a very quick way of creating sort of almost a schedule of accommodation check against what's been planned and what's been designed. And you know, again, trying to find whether that door has been modeled and it's on a 2D drawing, it's actually quite an arduous task to do. I'm sure you've all lived through doing that in a manual way. It's actually a really great automated way to do it in dRofus. I'm now going to show you the reports module. And so, as we've been talking, a lot of data goes in either into dRofus or connected to the Revit model. But what we're going to show you now is just a couple of examples, or 3 examples of some of the reports that can be taken out. One is we have 2 types. We have Excel exports, which are standard reports that you can set up and have logos to, and set them up as templates so that next time you want to run this report, it's there automatically. And this is an accommodation schedule. It's very similar to what I showed you before for that building at that level 7. And you can see you can actually load on, you can have your company logos, you can set it all nicely formatted so that you're not dumping Excel files each time. You've got a nice report. And one of the key PDF reports that we deliver is obviously the room data sheet. And this shows you there's like a selection criteria. We go back to that room on level 7, the premium bed room. You have various options to select here. You can include occurrences, you can include your FF&E, you can include images. It's quite an intuitive sort of guide to be able to sort of set that as and then you generate the report. And this This next one is, this is what would we report it. So just remember, this is a single room data sheet coming out of one source. You have a QR code on the top right-hand corner. You'll then have the room name, the key requirements. As we go through, you mention those architectural notes from that room. Even on the room data sheet, if there is a deviation from the template, it will also show here. And you can see as we go through, you've got various different items, hazards. We then have the FF&E lists. So you obviously got finishes. You can attach room layout sheets. You can attach images, etc. So that's the core sort of room data sheet. Again, then you would be able to deliver other PDFs such as finishing schedules, furniture schedules. We're just going to show you how you would deliver that chair as a furniture schedule. Again, there are a couple of options in terms of what you want to be included, some filters in terms of what you want including. But again, it's the same idea. If you want the pictures, if you want the QR code, you can have it. If you don't, you don't. And again, this will then deliver, as I've mentioned before, this is not coming from different sources. This is coming from one place. And you've got the chair, the information, the specification, the price if you want to include it, the warranty, a picture, then also obviously then the occurrences of the rooms where that chair appears. So, again, not just there's a number of other reports. I do want to make it clear that these are standard templates. This again, you might not be able to see this on the screen, but this is a typical layout of a room data sheet. You would have your own, you could have your Ronald Lou logos and your client's logo. You've got the QR code, which is really useful for being on site and doing validation, clicking back to the room, the data where that information has come from, even doing room validation. Then you've got some key occupancy information, sign-offs, images, and then you can see for each of the, again, this is customizable. You might have audio visual, you might have a fire risk, whatever it is, but these are the different sections where you'd have all of that data coming out of dRofus to create your room data sheet. And here then you've got the FF&E lists, and you can see here it's quite a complex building, cupboards, fridges, and then the finishes. You've got carpets, you've got paint, you've got flooring, all of the information coming out of one place. And you can see here the responsibility. So this is where in dRofus you can set up responsibility groups. So here, for instance, it's the architect. Here it's an engineer. Here it's a doors and windows supplier. Here it's the electrical engineer. So again, this is all coming out from one place, one fountain of knowledge to create this. And as I mentioned before, this is almost a sort of standard dRofus template. These can be customized. We have a number of options that you can create out of the box, if you like. But if you did have your own specific template, we would work with you to be able to create that and have that set up as required. I do want to quickly show, sorry, yeah.
Is it possible that if we customize that room data sheet ourselves, or it also need to through you guys to format that?
That's a good question. There are in the settings, there are a number of things you can do, in terms of which fields you include, the order of the fields, whether you want images. So there is a certain amount of customization you can do yourself. But if there's some sort of major things, it would have to come to us. But, we can then do that and set them up for you.
Also, you talk about we can attach images to the room data sheet, but is it possible to create like views in Revit? If I generate the perspective elevation section of the room, I want to attach to the same room data sheet, the same room room data sheet, and if I update it, is it automatically update in that room data sheet as well? Like two question. One, can we generate the views from room data sheet? And the second question is, if we update that section or elevation, let's say I move the elevation or section back, line backward or forward, will automatically update in that room datasheet as well?
I'm actually going to handball to Jasper. Hope you can maybe try and answer those two questions, Jasper.
I thought you might do that to me, Matt. Yes, in short, we can synchronize the views from Revit into dRofus images. There will be some form of naming convention that needs to be applied to those views before you can do that. In terms of updating, you only update when you synchronize your room with dRofus. It doesn't update live. So if you think about it, the images inside of dRofus is a static image, and the only time it gets updated is if you tell through the plugin in Revit, I want to synchronize this, and there'll be an option to click asking if you want to update images. So that will be the time you will do it.
Okay. What about if the view that I create a link?
Sorry, I missed that last part.
If the view that I create is from the link model, it's not in main.
It's not in, so you will need to synchronize that from that particular model.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if you have a view set inside of Revit and it's linking from the other, because if you use, I think Revit function is called by linked view. If you have a view, then you might do that. I'll need to test that workflow out, but in theory, it should be able to do it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Sorry, it's not me here from Honolulu as well. Hi, Matt and Jasper. I would like to also ask about just how Olivia asked the views, whether we can actually have everything in scale, because our room data sheet required to attach all. I'm not sure if you are going to cover that in the later presentation. I would like to check if can be scaled drawings attached every time if we generate this room data sheet as well. That's the first question. And the other one is when you talk about the link model just now, because we had actually quite a large team working on this project. It's a stadium project. So we have maybe, I don't know, probably more than 10 models soon. So the link model, like a connection to the room data sheet and this software is quite critical. So is it possible to confirm that if we can come from the single source as one file, or we would need to actually have, say, 10 different settings? Or I'm not sure how can we do that if it's not going to come from the same source that we can generate all the data from the link models.
Right, I'll answer the first question first.
Thank
about
you.
the images. The image, when exported from Revit, is the size that you set it to export. But when we lay it out in dRofus, it is not possible to get it to a scale like, typically 1 to 100 or something. It's all the report is doing is picking up the number of images and trying to lay them out on the sheet. So to that extent, it won't be to scale. In terms of the number of models and the linking that you're doing, I'm just going off assumptions of my past experience working on complex projects. Probably the way I would suggest is inside the plugin, we do have a function to copy rooms and update rooms. And probably the best way is to have the rooms that you want to sync in dRofus with the items be copied across those models that it sits in. And every time when you run that function, it will either create the new rooms if it's not there, or if the room is there, it will pick up the room and update the room details that way.
So the linked information within that room can be picked up as well. Let's say there's MEP models in ours, so we can still generate everything from our model. Instead of going through each model, each Revit model to generate.
You probably will need to do a sync from the MEP model to get it data into dRofus, and subsequently that will be the sync to do. So because the way the synchronizing works is it needs to have the room inside with the Revit families and Revit content, so it detects that relationship. It is possible to link to have a, let's say, an overarching model and the rooms, and then you can pull the information through. But in terms of trying to do validation, it doesn't necessarily pick up the items to link it through. So that's something that we can explore a bit further, because it sounds like there is quite a complex sort of linking of different Revit files together.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I mean, I would always argue have the information in dRofus, then link it back to the models. Not you. I mean, using dRofus as the boss, to quote one of our clients, rather than using the data in the models as the fountain of knowledge. We'll just move on. Actually, so just another couple of. Well, this is actually the last of the video clips, and what we've shown you before is a view of dRofus from the client database and how that connects to Revit. So we've got the, you use that, you download the software, you have it on your client, on your laptop. There is another way to view dRofus. It's not exactly an app because it's not down on, it's basically a web viewer. So you're viewing dRofus it's the same data, but you're viewing it on your on your phone or on your tablet. And what we find here is this is really great for project managers, the guys that aren't necessarily going to be doing the data input or day to day, but want to go to a project meeting and want to have dRofus in front of them as the live data. And you can see here we've got a different building. We're going in on level 2, and we're going to go into this support department, and there's an open plan office there. What you can see on the right hand side, we have also dRofus has a IFC viewer and server connected. So this is data from dRofus. This is not looking at this, not a 3D model. That's not Revit. So, again, if you want to view, if you've got a project manager that wants to view the project from a holistic level, doesn't want to have to go into the 3D model, you really can view dRofus. You can see it's very much the same modules on the left-hand side, rooms, items, etc. But it's just much more easy to view. And if you're doing things on site, I showed you the QR code earlier. If you can imagine, if you're doing room validation, there's the room data sheet on the wall, and there's basically a phone or a tablet. You'd be clicking that, and you'd go straight into dRofus to that particular room, and you'd be able to say, okay, are the windows in this case, or is the thermal? If the thermal's done, the acoustics done, has it been, all the fit out stuff. So yeah, it's just a really good, that just emphasizing that point that the QR code goes back to the room, and the best way to use that on site is via the dRofus web rather than the client, although you can view it from both if you wish to. So that ends the software demo. I'm sure you'll have a few more questions, but I just wanted to show 2 other things which I think will be important. Clearly, this software, if you have a lot of people using it, is a lot of data, and you need to be able to see what's changed. And one of the critical things about dRofus is every single time somebody makes a change, a quantity, or whatever, that is logged. So it's great for FF&E planners or anybody, if you're looking at validation, just to track design progress and look at revisions. It's really important to stress that's all captured. You'll never not know who did what. And you can also set up different change lists. So for example, here we've got a user group meeting where you'd be able to say, okay, what are we looking at? Instead of somebody having a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet or something else taking minutes, you just set up user group meeting, and any agreed changes would just be done, and you done live, and you would have an instant, very clear report of what was changed and who changed what, and the log note. So that's, again, a really, I've got stories of clients telling me by having these logs, we were able to, save themselves from being sued, etc.
I'm sorry. We have one more colleague that want to join the meeting. Oh, sorry. Wait, just wait for a minute.
We're happy to do that as long as they don't want me to start from the beginning again.
It's okay now. It's okay now. My colleague is in. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I think hopefully I saw this was being recorded, so hopefully that colleague will have the opportunity to see the recording of the demos as and when. So the next thing we talked about, I think you're very conscious of how different users can access the platform and divide use levels. We have basically in the system, there is ability to create user groups. Some people would be set to have read only. Some people, you just want to have a look at room data. Other people are dealing with items or FF&E. You may even have a door manufacturer who's a specifier that you want to do the door specification. Long story short, these can all be set up as users. They can have different levels of permissions. And those views you saw, I showed you in the room data schema, those tabs, that view can be limited so different people don't see, and you can certain users will only see what's important to them. And then so that is basically the software demonstration. I did want to mention something. The software, it's a software as a subscription. So for the length, if the project is 2 years, you will buy a monthly subscription for 2 years, and we can talk about the calculation of that. But when the project comes to an end, what happens? And this is a bit of a busy slide, but if we set up an agreement with Ronald Liu, Farida would supply you with a dRofus welcome pack, which answers all of your questions about setup and users, etc. But it also has this on page 9, which are the options for when the 2 years are up. So the first option is we have a wiki page on our website, which has all of the step-by-step guides, and this will show you how you can extract the data, all of the reports, all of your information into Excel or wherever you want to dump it, so everything in that database can be exported. The second option, that's the automatic option that you get with a normal subscription. Option 1 here is project close and archiving service. So dRofus would do all of the things we mentioned above. We'd create all of these Excel reports and dump the information, but we'd also create a compressed database file, which would basically be like a USB of that project that you could have. It comes off of our server, but you would have, and then you could potentially later in a couple of years, if you wanted to reanimate that, you could give us back and we would be able to start the project again. Or if you wanted a second project that had a lot of information from the same structure, we could do that. The next option is simply you want to extend. So we can agree to extend beyond the 2 years, however you like. We can transfer to another party. Very often we've had this where an architect takes out the original contract with dRofus to do schematic design, but then an owner or a builder wants to take over the license. That's very simple. It's just a legal process of transfer of ownership of the database. The next option is read only. So you would basically still have access to go and look at the data, but you'd have read only. You wouldn't be able to change the data. And very often at the end of a project, when you're doing handover to the client, you want to have the data there. You know, it's almost like having an as-built dRofus database. You don't have to maintain 3D models, but you'd have the data in dRofus, and then we would charge you a discounted rate. You can see there, read-only access would be 20% of the monthly fee. And finally, maybe sometimes, as long as the original contract period is up after 2 years, you might say to us, well, we've done enough with dRofus now. There's now a period of the project's going on hold for whatever reason, COVID, and we need to put the project on hold. We can do that as long as you guarantee that there will be a further subsequent 3 months to the contract. So yeah, again, I've gone into too much detail there. It's all there in page 9 of the dRofus welcome pack. And then obviously the sort of next thing for us would be to talk about licensing. And I think my colleagues at Farida would talk to you about this in more detail, but what we would do is we would take your project GFA, we would take the area where you're going to be using dRofus. So we would exclude areas, maybe you're going to be using you're going to have external areas or areas where you're not going to use dRofus, maybe a car park. So it's the area where you're going to be using dRofus. We would take that square meterage and then we would use a dollar rate per square meter to calculate a monthly subscription. So that's what we would love to do. If you're interested for this project, if you tell us the square meterage, we will prepare that that quote for you. That would include set up the monthly fee. Longer term, what customers do is, and I hope this will be the case with you, many of those clients you saw on that original slide I showed, HOK and all of those guys, they don't have a single project by project license. They have an enterprise agreement whereby we agree 100,000 square meters or 200,000 square meters, and then you can have as many projects going as you like in that enterprise agreement model. And that's really useful for people that are just, sometimes clients are just doing schematic design where they only need dRofus for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and it can be set to inactive. So again, I think our journey would be, let's try and get a single project agreement to prove the software. And then hopefully over time, you'll say you want to embed dRofus in your workflows. And so we'll go to an enterprise agreement. The enterprise agreement, again, is a rate per square meter model, but there are some benefits of going to the enterprise agreement because you don't have project by project setup fees and other things. And just one final thing, I know I've sort of probably been talking too long now, but in terms of training, we do offer, like every software company, I'm sure you have this with Revit and others, they will offer, and Farida provide this probably as well, general user training. But maybe since the inception of COVID, we've realized that we actually need to improve our online training. So we've got this, what we call dRofus Academy. So probably rather than do live training with you in the first project, you would have access to the dRofus Academy, where all of the training materials are there. So you could do all of the training in about 2 days. You can do all of the training. It may well be that we would do a mix of live training and the Academy online training, but that's the option. So I hope that was useful for everybody. I appreciate I had to rattle through that, and sometimes it's hard to see the software on a screen, but that concludes my presentation. Very happy to take any further questions, and we can agree next steps.
Yeah.